My father had $40 million, an empire in commercial real estate, and a golden rule. Image is everything. So when I chose to marry a man who came home every evening with dirt under his fingernails and burns on his heavy work boots, my father didn't just disown me, he humiliated me. In front of our entire family at Thanksgiving dinner, he handed me a single dollar bill and said, "That's your entire inheritance, Maya. Let's see how far love gets you when the bills come due." Everyone at the table laughed, expecting me to break, beg, or crawl back. My lawyer begged me to contest the disinheritance, but I just smiled, took the dollar, and walked out. They all thought I was naive. What my father and his arrogant inner circle didn't realize was that while they looked down on my husband's trade, they completely overlooked what a master welder actually does, and how his access to industrial infrastructure was about to dismantle my father's empire from the inside out. I'm glad to have you here. Follow my story until the end and comment the city you're watching from so I can see how far my story has reached. My name is Maya. At 31 years old, I had spent years working as a corporate project manager, strictly following the rules set by my father, Richard. He built a $40 million commercial real estate empire, and to him, social standing was everything. He expected me to marry a suit-wearing corporate executive who fit into his country club lifestyle. Instead, I fell in love with Caleb, a self-employed structural welder who came home every evening with grease on his hands, dirt under his fingernails, and burn marks on his heavy leather work boots. The tension exploded at our annual Thanksgiving dinner. In front of our extended family, my father stood up, cleared his throat, and adjusted his tailored suit. He pulled a single, crisp dollar bill from his pocket and slid it across the white tablecloth toward me. "That's your entire inheritance, Maya," he declared loudly, as my arrogant older brother Julian smirked beside him. "If you choose to degrade this family by marrying a manual laborer, you don't get a dime. Let's see how far love gets you when real bills come due." The entire table burst into laughter, treating my life like a joke. They expected me to cry or beg for forgiveness. My family's lawyer silently urged me to contest his words. But I simply looked at my father, picked up the dollar bill, and smiled. I didn't shed a single tear as Caleb and I walked out the front door. They thought I was naive and defeated. What my father failed to realize was that while they sneer at my husband's trade, they overlooked what a master welder actually does, and how his access to massive infrastructure was about to tear my father's empire apart. Leaving my father's mansion with a single dollar in my pocket wasn't easy, but Caleb and I didn't spend a second wallowing in self-pity. We moved into a modest two-bedroom rental, relying entirely on Caleb's steady income from independent welding jobs. While he spent long, exhausting days on job sites, I put my project management background to work. I organized his invoices, restructured his billing, and audited the commercial contracts he picked up as a subcontractor. That's when I stumbled across something massive. While reviewing public municipal filings for major city infrastructure developments, I found the blueprints for the city's new $50 million downtown skyscraper renovation, a flagship project my father's real estate firm was desperately trying to secure to keep their company solvent. As I analyzed the city's engineering requirements, my eyes widened. The city had updated its structural safety codes, demanding specialized high-grade steel welding and compliance certifications that only a handful of local contractors possessed. My father was so focused on winning the bid that he had completely overlooked the complex technical realities standing in his way. What my father didn't realize was that Caleb wasn't just any welder. He was one of only 3 people in the state holding master certifications in both heavy structural steel and underwater welding. He understood compliance, load-bearing stress, and metallurgy better than any suit-wearing engineer on my father's payroll. When I looked into my father's bid for the skyscraper project, the flaw was glaring. To cut costs and maximize profits, Richard's company had relied on cheap, imported structural steel fabrication that failed the city's new compliance codes. They assumed they could talk their way past inspectors, just like they always did. They were dead wrong. Seeing their fatal blind spot, I took our small savings, combined it with Caleb's master licenses, and quietly registered a new independent steel inspection and fabrication firm. We secured exclusive regional rights to certified compliance testing for high-grade structural work. While my father spent millions on flashy marketing, my husband and I quietly took control of the one technical bottleneck his entire multi-million-dollar project couldn't survive without. Just 6 weeks after construction began, my father's arrogance caught up with him. City building inspectors paid a surprise visit to the skyscraper site, and the results were a total disaster. The cheap imported steel beams failed load-bearing stress tests, and the uncertified welds cracked under pressure. The city immediately issued a total work stoppage order. Every single day the site sat frozen. My father's firm was hit with a staggering $100,000 in liquidated damages. If they couldn't find a certified master fabrication team to tear out defective work, repair structural framework, and officially recertify the entire building within 30 days, Richard's company would face total bankruptcy. Panic spread through his boardrooms like wildfire. Desperate to save his empire, my father instructed Julian to spare no expense and hire the highest-rated structural compliance firm in the state. Julian made the call, begging for an emergency intervention meeting, completely unaware that the CEO on the other end of the line was the daughter he'd laughed at, and the chief operations officer was the welder he despised. The glass-walled conference room on the dusty construction site was suffocatingly tense when my father and Julian arrived. They looked exhausted, their expensive suits disheveled as they held folders filled with emergency city penalties. When the door opened, Julian stood up expecting a team of corporate executives. Instead, his jaw dropped and the color drained completely from my father's face. I walked into the room wearing a tailored blazer, sitting at the head of the main table as the owner of the state's primary structural compliance firm. Right beside me stood Caleb, wearing his heavy work boots, dark denim jeans, and carrying his certified master inspector helmet. "Maya," my father stammered, his voice trembling for the first time in his life. "What is this joke? Where is the owner?" "You're looking at her," I replied, sliding our official state master credentials across the glass table. "And this is the master inspector whose signature is the only thing standing between your firm and total financial ruin." Julian tried to laugh off his panic. "You think you can hold us hostage, Maya? We'll just hire someone else." Caleb stepped forward, his voice low and steady. "There is no someone else, Julian. Every certified master welder in this region works for our company. You have 24 hours before the city revokes your permit permanently." My father sank into his leather chair, staring at the daughter he had publicly disowned. We weren't just charging triple our standard emergency rate. I laid down a new contract that demanded controlling equity in the entire $50 million skyscraper development. He had no choice, and he knew it. Julian slammed his fist onto the table, arguing that my contract was predatory, but our legal team had made it completely airtight. The city's deadline was ticking, and every passing hour cost my father's company tens of thousands of dollars. With zero alternative contractors holding the required master certifications, my father realized he was trapped. To save the rest of his real estate empire from total collapse, Richard was forced to sign over controlling rights of the skyscraper project directly to my company. His hands shook as he put his pen to the final page, officially surrendering control of the $50 million development to the daughter he'd cut out of his life. As he signed his name, I reached into my blazer pocket and pulled out a small, framed item. It was the very same $1 bill he had handed me at Thanksgiving dinner to humiliate me. I slid it across the table, right next to his trembling hand. "Consider this my down payment for your project, Dad," I said softly, looking him dead in the eye. "Let's see how far love gets us now." With the contract signed, Caleb and his crew took over the site immediately. Working around the clock, they ripped out the defective steel, executed flawless welds, and certified the skyscraper's structure well before the city's deadline. The project was a massive success, establishing our company as the premier master fabrication firm in the state. My father was forced into early retirement, his reputation shattered by the scandal, while Julian's lack of practical skill left him ousted from the industry entirely. Meanwhile, Caleb and I transformed our venture into a multi-million-dollar, union-friendly enterprise, proving that honest blue-collar skill combined with strategic intelligence will always dismantle unearned corporate arrogance. My father thought he could destroy my future with a single piece of paper, but he forgot a fundamental truth. Tradesmen build the very foundations millionaires stand on. What would you have done if your family disowned you like this? Would you have walked away or fought back? Let me know in the comments below, and don't forget to tell me which city you're watching from so I can see how far my story has reached. Make sure to like, subscribe, and click the next story popping up on your screen right now for even more crazy twists.